Tonight on Unsolved Mysteries.
A 19-year-old college student's car becomes disabled along an interstate. Minutes later, in full view of other motorists, the same young woman finds herself in a life-or-death struggle as she hurtles down the highway. Authorities need your help to find her attacker. When Helen Root was diagnosed with cancer and Dave Cernan with hepatitis, they began searching for a medical miracle. They believe they found it in Dr. Caplinger, a physician with an experimental remedy. Could the doctor's treatment save their lives, or would it turn out to be deadly? He was a well-loved teacher, a selfless family man, and a community icon. In fact, many considered him a hero. Who would have ever thought that Frank Montenegro would be charged with child molestation? A small Idaho town is shaken by the mysterious disappearance of a young gay college student. Wil Hendrick vanished one January night and hasn't been heard from since. Did he willingly walk away, or is it possible he was a victim of crime? Join me for these stories that have defied reason and explanation. Perhaps you will be the one to solve a mystery. A beautiful spring day outside Little Rock, Arkansas. Routine lunch hour traffic was suddenly interrupted by an unfolding drama that was anything but routine. A white pickup swerved erratically as it barreled down the highway. Inside, a terrified female passenger struggled for her life with the male driver. Frantic 911 calls poured in, but no one could come to her rescue. Horrified witnesses were powerless to stop what seemed inevitable.
The guy's going crazy and she's hanging out. She's about to fall out the door.
The driver sped off without a moment's hesitation. 19-year-old Carson Prince was rushed to the hospital with massive head injuries. As doctors tried to stabilize Carson's injuries, Arkansas State Police investigators swung into action. Identifying and locating the driver of the white pickup truck became their #1 priority. But authorities had other puzzling questions related to the shocking broad daylight attack. Did Carson know her assailant? And if not, what was a well-liked college student doing in his truck? Carson Prince grew up in Maumelle, Arkansas, a suburb of Little Rock. She was the oldest of 3.
Carson was a neat kid. She was a very caring and giving young lady, but she didn't expect anything in return.
She was very, very funny. Carson could always make you laugh, even if she didn't feel like laughing inside.
However, Carson's outlook changed dramatically when her parents divorced when she was 13.
I think Carson was struggling with who she was and where she was going, and she kind of grew up in the middle of a 16-year divorce.
After coming to terms with her parents' divorce, Carson went on to earn a college scholarship to the University of Arkansas.
Carson was that friend who everybody adored. She was the person that was, more excited about your stories than you were. She was selfless. She was more into everybody else than she was herself.
During her sophomore year in college, Carson left school and moved back home with her dad. Then came that ill-fated spring morning.
Here you go, sleepyhead.
As I was heading out the door to go to work, I passed by her bedroom and she said, "Would you get me a glass of water?" You know how a daughter can pull on your heartstrings. I got her a glass of water and came in and sat down beside her bed, and she sat up. And we talked about what she was going to do during the day. She was going to go to school and pick up the forms for registering in the university there in Little Rock.
I like that idea. I'll come home early tonight and we'll go out and celebrate that.
Okay.
But Carson and her father would never have that celebration dinner. Carson's mother, who was a county prosecutor, was returning from lunch when she learned the dreadful news from her boss.
Suzanne, Carson's been in an accident.
An accident?
She's at the hospital. Everything's
Where's
gonna
Tom?
be fine. He's down there. Donnie, we're gonna get Suzanne down to the hospital.
Co-workers immediately rushed Suzanne to the emergency room.
Tom, where's Carson? Have you seen her?
She just got out of surgery.
Carson's divorced parents are brought together under the direst of
She's out of
circumstances.
surgery, and she's in intensive care. There were some spinal injuries and swelling of the brain. If the swelling doesn't go down, we may lose her.
You could tell very early on that Carson wasn't going to pull through. Her mother and I were there, and it's very peaceful. We stayed at Carson's side throughout the day as she slowly slipped away.
"19-year-old Carson Prince died at 10:30 that night. Investigators were already busy reconstructing the events leading up to Carson's death. Carson's Ford Bronco was found alongside Interstate 430, just half a mile from where her body was recovered. The car's gas tank was empty. Strangely, less than 30 minutes after leaving her house, Carson seemed to be headed back home in the opposite direction of her errands. A number of witnesses recall seeing Carson after she pulled to the shoulder of the highway. A gas station was within walking distance, so Carson's apparent next move does not make sense to her parents.
There's something strange in the fact that she didn't leave her vehicle and walk a quarter of a mile to the gas station to get gas or to get help.
Witnesses saw a young man with a white pickup truck stop near Carson's disabled vehicle. He was holding a gas can. Although investigators have yet to find anyone who witnessed it, Carson somehow got inside the truck.
I don't think Carson would have gotten into a truck with somebody she didn't know just because she was out of gas. I have a hard time believing she'd get in the truck with a stranger.
Either she knew the person that she got in the vehicle with, or the person forced her in under threat of her life. Otherwise, she wouldn't be in that vehicle.
Motorists reported witnessing a violent struggle going on inside the truck's cab as it sped down the interstate at nearly 70 miles an hour.
Carson was being beaten. Carson was fighting back, trying to defend herself. And that somehow the guy reached across, the door was opened, and Carson was shoved out of the door and trying to hang on while the truck was speeding away, and hung on as long as she could, and then fell out and fell to her death.
And the driver continued, which naturally in the highway patrol guy's mind says, okay, well, this, obviously this guy's left the scene of an accident here where someone's critically injured, so we got to find him. This truck was described to us by the witnesses as not being a totally white. It was more of a off-white or a cream type white color even.
Unfortunately, to this point, authorities have been unable to locate the truck. Next came an investigation into all aspects of the college student's life. Authorities would learn that Carson had developed a stormy relationship with a young man of dubious character whom she had met while working at the local country club.
Carson, how you doing, sweetie?
I have to go back to work.
Friends were concerned that Carson could not seem to break away from the turbulent affair.
Whoa.
The reasons that she wanted to be with him, I still don't know. I don't know what she saw in him because he just made her unhappy all the time.
All right, I gotta go.
All right.
I told her, I was like, Carson, this guy's not good for you. He's not good for you at all. You know, all he does is make you cry. He makes you upset. He's not doing anything for you at all.
The young man was also no stranger to law enforcement.
Yeah.
He was a suspected drug dealer.
Yeah, let's do this about 7:30.
It's believed Carson's boyfriend occasionally used her car when making deliveries.
I told her that if she were out with him and he got arrested, she was going to get arrested too.
What's up, man? What do you got?
Whatever his fate was, she would share it. She didn't seem to be too worried about that.
Hi, hon.
Then, the day before her death, Carson unexpectedly showed up at her mother's home. The prediction that had been made about her boyfriend's arrest had actually come true.
I didn't give Brian anything. Yes, you did. He would have gotten probation.
Carson was upset because she believed her mother, as a deputy district attorney, could have been involved in her boyfriend's arrest and prosecution.
No, Brian got exactly what he was supposed to get.
No.
And at that point, I got afraid. I thought that he was outside. The Bronco had pulled into the carport, lights on, engine running. I thought he might be going to come to the door and hurt me, blaming me for a prison sentence that I didn't even know anything about.
Carson, I didn't have anything to do with it.
And I told her, y'all need to leave.
No, it's just a friend.
And that's the last time I saw her.
Listen, Carson, I didn't have anything
So I find
to
it
do with Brian.
a very strange coincidence that within 12 hours of her telling me that, she's on the side of the road, fatally injured.
So who killed Carson Prince? Well, Carson's boyfriend has been cleared of any involvement in her death. Could it have had anything to do with his drug dealing? Could she have been fleeing a stalker? Or had Carson merely run out of gas at the wrong moment?
I wish I had some answers. I don't think there will ever be justice for Carson, but I think there will be truth, and I will settle for that.
Helen Root packs her bags for a trip to Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic.
Sounds like you're in good hands.
It certainly does.
She is not headed for a tropical vacation, but is on a mission she believes can save her life.
I'm just worried that he wants me there so soon.
I had third stage colon cancer, and the whole right side of my colon was removed. They wanted me to have 6 months of chemotherapy, and I chose not to have that, and I was looking for an alternative.
So Helen Root and her husband William mortgaged their home for the $40,000 Helen needed for an experimental drug therapy. A friend had told them about a Dr. Caplinger in Santo Domingo who reportedly had an amazing treatment for fighting cancer. Dr. Caplinger's resume was a long and impressive list of medical schools, including Harvard University. According to his brochure, the clinic in Santo Domingo was a world-class facility. There, his remedy, a drug cocktail called Imustim, didn't need FDA approval. Caplinger claimed Imustim could fight many deadly diseases, including AIDS and hepatitis. Helen was glad to arrive in Santo Domingo, but was taken aback by the poor condition of the facility.
Right down here is Dr. Caplinger's office.
I noticed that there was no patients in the rooms. It was pretty old-fashioned looking and kind of dumpy, and not certainly what I was expecting to see.
Within a few hours, Helen was relieved to finally meet the doctor she'd heard so much about.
Mrs. Ruth, Dr. Caplinger.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
He looked very professional and very caring and very concerned about my condition. And so I thought, well, finally I'm going to get some good help here.
It could become malignant.
Although U.S. doctors had confirmed Helen to be cancer-free, Caplinger said his review of her file revealed a small tumor that needed aggressive treatment. Helen was frightened, but also confident she had made the right choice to travel so far from home.
You're in good hands.
Because of the degrees that he had, because of his background, I thought I was in excellent hands.
Hello?
Until the next morning, when she received a phone call from her husband, William.
Helen, you can't take the treatment.
9 a.m. Saturday morning, and it's my husband on the phone, almost hysterical, saying, Helen, you've got to come home. That man is not a doctor. He's a crook.
We have to get the money back. Tell him we had a family emergency.
I said, Helen, you got to get out of there. He's ripping us off. Say whatever you have to say, but don't take any treatments. Get out of there. Come home as quickly as you can.
I'll try.
What Helen's husband discovered is that Gregory Caplinger is not a doctor. He is a fugitive wanted by the FBI. Caplinger is an alleged con man accused of scamming millions from investors and unsuspecting patients willing to support his cure-all drug, Immustim. The FBI believes Immustim could contain a combination of illegal steroids, vitamins, and amphetamines.
Caplinger was a medical imposter. He had more phony credentials than any other medical imposter in history.
Caplinger is a con man because he plays on the people that are dying. He plays on their families. He gives them that one last hope to live, takes their money, and provides very little care.
He never went to any medical school. He got some of his papers by sending money to British diploma mills that simply issued them when they got his money.
Dr. Barrett has created an extensive website dedicated to medical scams. It is there that a friend of the Roots read the disturbing truth about Dr. Caplinger and quickly called William.
When I heard that he was a fraud, I feared for her life. There she is down there all by herself. I thought, boy, how's she going to handle this? She doesn't speak any Spanish, she doesn't know anyone, and now her friends are the enemy.
Dr. Caplinger, Mrs. Ruth's here to see you.
I knew that I had to go to his office and ask for my money back. And now I'm not talking to the Dr. Caplinger, I'm talking to a crook.
What could be more important than your life?
He said, there's no emergency at home that's more important, Helen, than your health.
I can't save your life. I think you're making a great mistake.
Helen insisted, and by the next day, Caplinger agreed to return 20 of the $40,000 payment she had made.
We figured we would take that and be happy that we got that, so we thought $20,000 was better than none.
3 years after Helen's ordeal, she remains cancer-free, but she is one of the lucky ones. There are dozens of others who suffered at the deadly hands of the doctor imposter.
Usually, in many, many cases, they'd never make it out of the Dominican Republic. Many of them died there.
Linda and Dave Cernan also put their faith in Dr. Caplinger when it looked like Dave had no other options. They had been married 3 years when Dave was diagnosed with hepatitis C. 2 years later, he needed a liver transplant, but finding a match in time wasn't likely. So they gambled with Linda's inheritance and went to Santo Domingo.
Buenos dias. I'm Mrs. Cernan, and I'm here to check in my husband, Dave.
The money that we had to come up with, was worth every penny because Dave wanted to live. We would have done anything, in which we did do everything we could, and by going down there, I felt like, it was an answer from God.
Dave's treatment began immediately.
Dave was hooked up to an IV for 6 to 8 hours a day, and on alternating days, he received vitamins. The other days was a clear liquid that we were told that was the Immustim. Dr. Caplinger assured us that Dave's chances of living were very, very good.
But instead of getting better, Dave's health deteriorated rapidly.
I'm getting very worried. Dave isn't eating. He's too weak to walk or stand. I don't understand what's going on.
Well, with ImmuStim, things actually get worse before they can get better.
Dr. Caplinger reassured me that a lot of times the patient will go downhill before the drug really kicks in, before the vitamins really kick in, before the treatment really produces extravagant results.
As the weeks went by, Linda was shocked by the unsanitary conditions of the clinic.
There was no water probably 80% of the time. There was no electricity probably 60% of the time. There was lizards crawling on the walls. There was roaches everywhere. The conditions of this world-renowned institute was appalling.
Look, I want to go home. I want to see John. Like now.
Although Dave hadn't been strong enough to get out of bed for weeks, Linda was desperate to get him home to see his son.
Mrs. Cernan, what can I do for you?
We're going home, Dr. Caplinger. We can't stay here any longer.
He was rather upset. He said that you have to give the treatment a chance to work. You have to stay and stick with this.
I can still save him.
No! I told him that there was no way that there was any kind of improvement. It was just deterioration. We realized we had made a mistake at this point, and we were going home, and we left. When we got to Santo Domingo, Dave was weak, but he was walking, he was eating. At the end of 6 weeks, my Dave could not stand, he could not eat, he could not even talk to me. He was too weak to even hold a phone.
Dave Cernan passed away just 24 hours after returning to the United States.
I very much believe Dr. Caplinger killed my husband.
Shortly after completing production on this story, Unsolved Mysteries was informed that after 2 years of evading law enforcement, Gregory Caplinger has turned himself in to Dominican Republic officials. Outstanding warrants allowed Caplinger to be immediately extradited to the U.S. Due to a knee injury, Caplinger was transported in a wheelchair.
He spent 2 days in the care and custody of the Dominican authorities, and then agents from the Charlotte Division flew down to the Dominican Republic, were there no more than a half hour, took custody of him, put him in a plane and flew him back.
The FBI added Caplinger to their wanted list after he fled during a 1999 trial in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he was convicted of money laundering in the ImmuStim scheme. Caplinger is also facing indictment in Philadelphia for 39 counts of wire fraud related to the travel and treatment of patients who went to his clinic in Santo Domingo.
When you look at the charges of wire fraud, or you look at the charges of mail fraud, they may not seem to reach that level of, why are you just charging this man with a simple fraud when in fact, people were dying and dying terrible, terrible deaths. But it's a surefire way of putting this man in jail.
Linda Cernan, whose husband Dave died soon after receiving treatments from Caplinger, will be a key witness at Caplinger's pending fraud trial.
Caplinger may not be able to be tried as a first-degree murderer, but he did murder these people because he knew that his drug was a fraud. In my eyes, he is a murderer. I'm hoping that when he is sentenced, that he is given enough time that he can never get on the streets again, so that there's no way he can do this horrible thing to families again.
By any measure, he was a hero. At the age of 24, both of Frank Montenegro's parents suddenly died, leaving behind Frank and 5 children under the age of 18. Frank's response was both unselfish and noble. He immediately gave up his carefree life in San Diego and moved back home to Hayward, California to raise his orphaned brothers and sisters.
He basically was kind of like an angel that came in there and said, you know, it's going to be all right. You'll stay together, and you don't have to worry about being in different places and, you know, not being taken care of.
Soon the story of Frank's sacrifice was national news. Numerous newspapers and magazines proclaimed how Frank's generosity should be a lesson to us all.
Did a good job on that book report today.
To support his family, Frank taught special education at the local elementary school.
Good morning, gentlemen.
He seemed to be not only the perfect teacher, but also the perfect citizen, an avid churchgoer, a devoted family man, and a compassionate mentor to troubled kids.
Good morning. Aren't you a little bit late?
Known affectionately as Mr. Monty, everyone admired and trusted Frank Montenegro. Then, a mother of a boy in Frank's class says she made an odd discovery.
I noticed in his clothes a new pair of underwear.
Billy? Yeah. Whose are these? They're mine.
And I asked him, where did you get these? And he said, my teacher, Mr. Monty, bought them for me. I thought that was strange. Why would a teacher at school be buying a student underwear?
Because.
I couldn't really come up with a sensible reason, but I just kind of kept it in the back of my head. And a year after this had happened, my son said, he goes, I forgot to tell you something. And I go, what? And he goes, remember my teacher, Mr. Monty, the one that bought me those underwear and stuff? And I said, yeah, what about him? He said, well, he raped me.
Honest, kind-hearted, even heroic. These were the words commonly used to describe Frank Montenegro. Could somebody who seemed to care so much for children be harming them in such an unspeakable way? Because false accusations had been made in past cases of alleged child abuse, authorities were faced with a troubling dilemma. Was Frank an upstanding citizen, or was he really a child molester in disguise?
Any messages?
The allegation against Frank Montenegro landed on the desk of Fremont, California police detective Teresa Martinez. An officer since the age of 22, Martinez became a detective 3 years earlier and now worked on the sexual assault unit.
Frank Montenegro was seen as this huge icon in the community, and you can't ruin somebody's career because one child says it happened, and you can't go into court and convict a guy for child molest or sexual assault when there's nothing to corroborate it.
Do you know why you're here today? Yeah. So you know about good touch and you know about bad touch? Yeah.
Martinez's professional experiences with children had shown that they sometimes lie, so she had to corroborate the boy's story. She brought him to an interview center for child and sexual abuse victims where a specialist questioned the boy.
Show me where he...
Teresa watched on closed-circuit television so as not to frighten the child.
You want to show me on the picture where he touched you? Right here. And where do you call that spot? My private parts.
What came out of that interview is the victim said that all the students in his class had seen what had occurred. When we heard that, everybody's opinion was, okay, we know that's not true.
Okay.
Despite her doubts, Detective Martinez immediately interviewed all of the children in the boy's class.
How you doing?
They all denied seeing anything. Martinez decided to re-interview the boy herself.
Well, I talked to the kids, and not one of them said they saw what happened. I want you to tell me the truth. Did any of those kids see what happened?
The boy admitted to lying about the other students seeing the assault. He said he became scared during the initial interview and thought this lie would stop investigators from questioning him. But he insisted that everything else he had said was true. Frank Montenegro had attacked him.
You don't have to believe me, but he did it.
This kid was so believable. His demeanor wasn't one of being untruthful, and, you know, he just wasn't lying, and I believed him.
So this is Mr. Montenegro's classroom.
Detective Martinez searched Frank's classroom where the victim said the attack took place.
Now this is pretty much
As she made her way to the back, she found something you'd never expect to see at an elementary school. Through a nondescript door were two hidden rooms. Separating them, a two-way mirror.
There should be no reason for a two-way mirror between those two rooms. I'm thinking, why would he need that? And in my mind as an investigator, I'm thinking, this guy's probably filming these acts.
So this is the computer that I was telling you about. It's pretty nice, isn't it?
The way the two rooms are set up in the back, if Frank wants to do this with this child, he can shut those doors, and even if somebody walked into the classroom, they wouldn't be able to see what was going on.
The following day, Detective Martinez returned to the rooms. According to Martinez, the two-way mirror was now a regular pane of glass. Fearing that Frank might have gotten wind of the investigation and was possibly destroying evidence, Martinez moved into high gear. A search warrant was immediately secured for Frank's home.
And when we searched his room, we found gifts for smaller kids and books about sex with younger kids. Now we're starting to get some things that are going to help me corroborate the profile of a child molester.
Frank was not home during the search, but a female relative was. Detective Martinez says the relative then made a disturbing revelation.
Are you here about the little boy in Frankie's room? I don't know anything about that little boy. Can you tell me more? Like
She told me of an incident involving another victim that was found in Frank's bedroom naked.
I went to the police about 2 weeks ago. And
After hearing about the possible second incident of molestation, Detective Martinez asked Frank to come in for questioning, and he agreed.
Billy you're talking about. Is there any reason why Billy would say you're the one that molested him?
I know Billy. He's a liar. He's always telling stories. You know?
Why would he lie about something like this?
We talked to him for close to 4 hours, and in that whole time, he never denied that he did anything. It was always, it couldn't have been me. Not, no, I didn't do it. It was more very passive, very clear to us that he wasn't being truthful.
You're the one that did this?
But it was still the word of a little boy who had initially lied against that of a well-respected teacher and community leader. And for allegations of child abuse that is often not enough to get an arrest warrant, Detective Martinez needed to corroborate her victim's testimony. Fearing that Frank might run at any moment, Martinez raced to find the alleged second victim. She discovered that a neighboring police department did have a complaint against Frank involving a boy in his bedroom. Detective Martinez immediately picked the boy up from school for an interview.
So I'm just going to talk to you about Frank a little bit, okay? So why don't we come out over here to the car?
His eyes started tearing up, and he looked as if, oh my gosh, I am caught. I need to talk.
We're going to the back door right here.
I knew that something had happened to that kid.
I want you to be real truthful about what happened, okay?
Detective Martinez says the boy finally told his terrible secret.
The stories he told me were probably some of the most horrific stories I'd ever heard. And to even picture in my mind how this guy did these things to this little boy, it made me sick.
Am I in trouble? No, you're not in trouble at all.
And it broke my heart to see this little kid, who's a great little boy, think that he was bad when he wasn't bad at all.
Mr. Monty?
Detective Martinez now had the corroboration she needed to arrest Frank Montenegro. But it was too late. Montenegro was already long gone. 6 days after Frank was interviewed by police, a car rented in his name was found abandoned in La Paz, Mexico. His whereabouts are currently unknown, but police believe he has likely returned to the United States.
It was hard for me to believe that he did this. I still had the tendency, like everybody else did, to look up to him. My heart has to go out to these children that this has been done to, because their innocence has been taken away from them.
I don't think just because he had a close run-in with the law that would motivate him or scare him to stop his actions. That obsession is still with him wherever he goes. And I hate to think that other kids are going through what my son went through.
Moscow, Idaho, population 25,000, is a quiet college community in one of the most conservative states in the country. The University of Idaho sits in this picturesque rural setting, making the town a unique mix of cowboys and academics. Little happens out of the ordinary here, so when a local university student suddenly vanished, Moscow was shocked.
People don't disappear around here. Murders don't happen. You know, I can name them on one hand in the last 20 years. We don't expect it, so it couldn't have happened. It didn't happen here.
On an early January morning, Wil Hendrick mysteriously vanished without a trace. Family and friends are desperate to know if Wil met with foul play or just walked away from his seemingly happy life. There are few clues to lead detectives in their search. At 25, Wil Hendrick seemed to have it all. He was a well-liked senior in the theater department and had a good job on campus. He recently landed a small part in a Hollywood action film. Some believe his disappearance may be connected to the fact that he was gay. No one seems to know what happened late one night in Moscow to interfere with Wil's bright future.
Is the outlet clear down there? Yes, it's kind of about a foot. It's okay.
The evening began with hard work. Wil and his partner Jerry, who'd been together for 5 years, were remodeling their kitchen.
That's it. I'm done. Well, Katie's party's tonight and we're going, right?
Wil decided he wanted to go to Katie's party.
I'm too tired.
I didn't want to go. I wanted to go to sleep. And at about midnight, he said, okay, I'm going to go and I'll be home in a few hours. I'll see you in a few hours. The last thing I told Wil was, I love you. And he said, I love you back.
It was the last weekend before school started, and everyone was coming back into town from Christmas break, and it was a perfect excuse for a party.
Oh, hey, Wil.
Hey, Katie. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
By the time Wil arrived, 2 parties were in full swing. On the 3rd floor were Moscow locals, mostly former athletes from the town high school. Katie's party on the 2nd floor was for her friends from the college theater department.
Because of the 2 different worlds that were kind of colliding that night, my concern was that there could be a possibility for some sort of confrontation, since Wil has no problem being open with how he is and with every opinion.
Okay, I'm a little worried about Karen, okay? I don't like that guy.
Throughout the night, Wil was preoccupied with another friend, Karen, and the trouble she was having with her boyfriend, a local resident who was attending the 3rd floor party.
Good, I'll cause you a scene. Let me go. I'll push you all I want. Hey.
Wil was very protective of his friends, and being as he was drunk, it enhanced his concern naturally, but he just wanted to make sure she was okay.
There were times when, if he'd had a bit to drink, he'd get belligerent. If somebody yelled a slur at him, he'd respond. He'd take the bait.
By about 2:30 in the morning, Karen had gone home, leaving Katie to keep Wil from putting himself in an unpredictable situation with Karen's boyfriend and the partiers on the 3rd floor.
Appreciate that. I'm going upstairs.
No, you're not.
Yes, I want to go upstairs.
No, you don't. You want to stay?
And then I thought, I want to make sure that Karen got home okay. So I called her house, found out that she was okay, found out she was asleep, and I walked back outside onto the porch, and Wil was gone.
Wil? Wil?
Katie noticed Wil's car was still parked out front and assumed he had gone upstairs. By the next morning, the car was gone.
It was about 11:30, 12 o'clock when I called Katie's, and I said, "Can you wake Wil up and send him home? We've got some stuff to do today." And she said, "Well, he's not here. He didn't stay here last night." And I started calling around to all the theater students, trying to find out if he'd gone to somebody else's house, continued drinking, passed out on their couch, and nobody had seen him.
He called about 7:30 Sunday evening, and he was concerned, and I was immediately concerned. It was winter, and my initial concern was hypothermia.
When Wil hadn't shown by Monday morning, nearly 36 hours after the party, his friends combed the city searching for him.
Find anything?
Nothing down here.
A big break came when the search team found Wil's car parked on a downtown street.
I did. I was just driving around and I just saw it, so I called you.
Jerry examined the car and was surprised to find it was unlocked and that Wil had left his portfolio inside.
That portfolio carried all of Wil's artwork, his drawings, his makeup sketches, everything that was important to him was in that portfolio.
And on the dash, his work keys from the university.
The keys that were left there, they never left his body.
Here's keys right here.
They were clipped to his belt or they were at home, because if you lost the keys, then he would have to rekey the building.
We did go through the car with a fine-tooth comb with crime lab folks. There weren't any blood or any hair samples that weren't Wil's. There wasn't anything in there that would indicate that any kind of foul play occurred, at least in the car.
Finding the car had only raised more questions about Wil's disappearance. Some of his friends thought it possible that Wil had left voluntarily to start a new life.
Wil had a lot of trepidation about school, and I think he shared that with me because we had that in common. Sometimes you just get overwhelmed, and his comment was, you know, I'd like to tour the country. I'd just like to take off someday. And I was like, wow, and not tell anyone? No, I said, you know, not even your parents? You know, what about your commitments? He's like, no, I'd just go. I think he took the car downtown and intentionally parked it. He left his work keys. He took his wallet. Maybe he even hitchhiked out of town.
I spent probably about a year hoping, praying that he had walked away, because the alternative was he was dead.
But after nearly 2 years and still no sign of Wil, his friends and family fear the worst. Katie believes it all goes back to her apartment building that January night.
My hypothesis, I guess you should say, is that something happened and it got out of control, and it probably didn't mean to happen, but then whatever happened got covered up simply because it became so huge.
I could see that this might have been a possibility, that he ran into somebody that didn't like gays and they did him in.
We did interview all of the folks on the top floor and did not get any indication from any of them that they had done anything other than just talk to Wil. Subsequent to our initial contact with them, those individuals on the top floor took a polygraph, and all of them did pass the polygraph.
The gap between 3:30 in the morning and then finding the car at 11 o'clock on Monday, it's a hole. It's a blank hole.
Jerry believes the car might hold the most important clues to Wil's disappearance. When the police released the car, he discovered disturbing details.
I found out that there was mud caked on the inside wheel wells of the car. So there was no reason for mud to be caked on the inside of the wheel wells. And then the other odd thing was that somebody had moved the seat all the way to its far back position, indicating to me that a large person may have been the last person to drive Wil's car.
Grasping for answers, Jerry pursued a theory that someone they both knew might have crossed Wil's path early that January morning. 2 months prior to Wil's disappearance, Jerry had fired a van driver who worked for his shuttle service.
One morning, he came in from his shift, demanding that the operations manager go out and change a headlight.
It's your van. You own the van. You fix the headlight. I don't want to argue about this, okay?
He started yelling, screaming, and ended it with a slur at my sexuality.
Faggot!
I terminated him on the spot.
What did you call me? Get off the property! I don't want you here again!
He subsequently went to work for a long-haul trucking outfit. And on the morning of Wil's disappearance, at approximately 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, he checked out a refrigerated truck from the dispatch in Lewiston, 30 miles south of here. There is a coincidence there in that the last time Wil was seen was about the time this driver would have been going to Lewiston.
We have had a number of sightings across the country that people call us up and say, hey, we have seen Wil. We have checked each and every one of those calls out, and they have not proven to be Wil. We have checked out hundreds of leads, put in hundreds and hundreds of hours on this particular case, and as far as absolute facts that we can lay down on a piece of paper to show what may have happened, we are no closer than we were on day one.
I don't know that it's important to find him, because if he's dead, and I believe that he is, I know where he's at. But I think having a body can really definitely put some closure.
Join me next time for more intriguing true tales on Unsolved Mysteries.